To his idol, Bob Marley would one day sing, "Haile Selassie is the chapel, power of the Trinity. He is the only King of Kings." A grand legacy will remain after Selassie's life, one that will declare him the heroic resistor of Italian colonialism, the benevolent protector of Africa and its diaspora, and a god incarnate. But these mythological representations found in popular culture maybe fail to account for his occasionally tyrannical reign over his empire. Welcome to another World War II in real-time biography special, where I take a closer look at the major or interesting figures of the war. I'm Indy Nidell. Haile Selassie is born in 1892, son of General Ras Makonnen, de facto foreign minister of Ethiopia. Makonnen is a Europe-friendly member of the Ethiopian royal family, but also one of the military leaders that fight off the Italians in the First Italo-Ethiopian War from 1887 to 1889. Haile Selassie grows up in the village Ejersa Goro in the Harar province of Ethiopia, where his father serves as regional governor and regent. He is actually born Lij Tafari Makonnen, meaning a child of royal blood who is respected or feared. See, through his paternal grandmother, Selassie is the descendant of the Bible's Queen of Sheba, Makeda, and King Solomon of Israel, making him a pretty big deal indeed. When his father dies in 1906, Haile Selassie is made titular governor of Selale by his cousin, the Emperor Menelik II, to ensure that he can retain access to royal payments and complete his studies. In 1916, the designated successor of the now deceased Menelik, Lij Iyasu, is deposed for reputedly having toyed with converting to Islam, which is considered incompatible with the Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity of the nation. If Selassie has any role in toppling the emperor-to-be, who is, by the way, also Selassie's wife's uncle, remains unclear to this day. Menelik's daughter, and Iyasu's aunt, is crowned Empress Zewditu, but by his birthright, Selassie becomes the heir apparent and Inderase, or regent. He now goes by the name Ras Tafari, literally the Regent Tafari. Although he is not the ruler proper, at age 24, he is now in effect leading the nation, especially in foreign policy. His leadership secures Abyssinia, Ethiopia, as a charter member of the League of Nations in 1923, launching him onto the international stage. See, he has learned internationalist attitudes from his father, and his exotic but Western-friendly personality, well, it's pleasing to the Western powers. Selassie also actively promotes global cooperation despite cultural and political differences with the Western powers. He tours Europe, Egypt, and the Levant, visiting with European royalty and politicians to much acclaim in the Western press. One of the things he promises to gain a place on the global stage is to abolish slavery, still endemic in Ethiopia at the time. He will, however, not live up to this promise, even when he ascends the imperial throne. Now, this cozy relationship with European colonial powers is a slack wire walk that he is not entirely comfortable with, or as he says himself, we need European progress only because we are surrounded by it. That is at once a benefit and a misfortune. In 1928, he faces a coup, specifically because of his relations with Europe, but it fails as the regional administration rallies behind him. The same year, the Empress then tries to have him tried for treason for signing a 20-year peace treaty with Italy. The whole thing fails miserably, though, and the Empress is instead forced to crown him Negus, king, elevating him almost to her own status. Finally, in 1930, she attempts to depose him by marching an army on Addis Ababa, but Selassie defeats her and ascends to the imperial throne as the 225th Negusa Nagast, or Emperor of Ethiopia. His full title, actually, to really introduce the man, is His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I, conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, King of Kings, and elect of God. In October 1935, the 20-year peace treaty is cut short when Benito Mussolini's Italians invade Selassie's lands. Now, I covered the Italo-Abyssinian War in a Between Two Wars episode, so there's a link at the end to check that out if you missed it. But in 1936, the Italians' offensive proves successful. They take the Ethiopian capital on May the 5th. Selassie loses his nation and gives the League of Nations stern warnings of the risks of appeasing aggressive nations. He scolds the League's failed commitment to collective security, haunting them with the caution, "It is us today, it will be you tomorrow." Selassie's pioneering stand against fascism affirms his significance on the global stage. Although this speech cements Selassie as a resilient leader, the guardian of his empire, and even Time magazine's Man of the Year, he does flee into exile. He lives in a grand Victorian house in Bath, England for most of the next 5 years. Soon enough, in his home country, World War II rages between British and Commonwealth troops and the Italians. The Allies are seriously outnumbered, but against the odds, in forceful counteroffensives, they defeat the Italians, ending their power in East Africa. In May 1941, Selassie triumphantly returns to Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill actually calls Selassie, telling him, "It is with deep pleasure that the British nation and empire have learned of your Imperial Majesty's welcome home. Your Majesty was the first of the lawful sovereigns to be driven from his throne and country by the fascist Nazi criminals, and you are the first to return in triumph." See, Selassie's anti-fascist stance makes him the ideal figure for the Allies' politicians to praise and celebrate, despite their own colonial conquests elsewhere. This convenient narrative for the Allies develops around Selassie, and he reflects their worldly abilities, their charitable concern for colonialism, and their aid to victims of fascism. Meanwhile, another myth is crystallizing around Selassie in Jamaica, as people there are learning about Selassie's heroism, his royal blood, his lineage from biblical figures, and his mighty campaigns against white colonial aggressors make him their perfect icon. To them, he is the messianic figure that Marcus Garvey had predicted decades ago. Selassie becomes the central figure of the Rastafarian movement, which takes Selassie's name, when he was regent, as its own. In his 1941 homecoming, he addresses his people with some powerful words to begin the healing of the nation. "Today is the day on which we defeated our enemy. Therefore, when we say, 'Let us rejoice with our hearts,' let not our rejoicing be in any other way but in the Spirit of Christ. Do not return evil for evil. Do not indulge in the atrocities which the enemy has been practicing in his usual way, even to the last." He secures his cult image of mystical power and spiritual benevolence. But the realities of this myth remain unclear. As the patriarch of his empire, Selassie's rule depended on a feudal system which continues to profit from the exploitation of slavery. His core ideology is borrowed from the ancient text Kebra Nagast, meaning the glory of kings, and promotes expansionist conquests that closely mirror the colonial philosophy that he took a stand against. Selassie's reign will not always be filled with magnificent national victories. He will attempt to conceal the deadly reality of the many famines that strike Ethiopia after the war, both to his own people and the international community. His repressive cover-up of the 1974 famine will lead to a coup d'etat in which he'll be overthrown, imprisoned, and suffocated by former military personnel. But his death, on August 27, 1975, at the age of 83, will be reported as respiratory failure. But though his rule of Ethiopia comes to an end, so grows his enigmatic legacy. What also grows is his mythological status as the core figure of the Rastafarian movement, and the glory of his struggle with oppressive colonial powers will light the spirits of the African diaspora across the globe. If you'd like to see that episode of Between Two Wars about the Italo-Abyssinian War, you can click right here for that. And do not forget to click subscribe while you're at it to never miss an exciting episode. And ring that bell. See you next time.